I retired and bought a cabin in the woods so I could finally be alone with nature. No noise, no people, just the wind in the treetops. Then my son-in-law called and said, "My parents are moving in with you. If you don't like it, come back to the city." I didn't say anything, but I left a surprise that would turn their lives upside down. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The keys felt heavier than they should have. I stood in Rebecca Marsh's real estate office in Cody, holding them while she stapled documents I'd already forgotten. Outside the window, March wind pushed tumbleweeds across the parking lot. "Congratulations, Mr. Nelson." Rebecca smiled like she'd handed me the world. Maybe she had. "You're officially a property owner in Park County." The cashier's check, $185,000, had left my account that morning. 40 years of overtime shifts, skip vacations, pack lunches, 4 decades compressed into 6 figures, now converted into 800 square feet of timber and solitude, 12 from civilization. Thank you. I pocketed the keys and shook her hand. My fingers were steadier than I expected. The drive from her office took me west on Highway 14, then north onto roads that grew narrower with each turn. Pavement became gravel. Gravel became dirt. Cell service dropped from 4 bars to 2, then 1. I stopped at a general store and bought coffee, bread, eggs, butter. The clerk asked if I was visiting. She nodded like I'd said something wise. The final 2 miles climbed through pine forests so thick the afternoon sun barely penetrated. When the cabin appeared in its clearing, I pulled over and cut the engine. Elk, 4 of them, grazed 50 yards beyond the porch. They raised their heads, studied my truck, then resumed eating. One flicked an ear at a fly. I sat there for 5 minutes watching them. No honking, no sirens, no voices bleeding through apartment walls. The cabin was exactly as the photos promised. Weathered cedar logs, green metal roof, stone chimney. Small, yes, but mine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled like pine sap and old wood smoke. 1 main room with a kitchenette. A bedroom barely large enough for a double bed. A bathroom with a shower stall. I'd have to enter sideways. Perfect. I unloaded the truck slowly, methodically, tools on the pegboard above the workbench. Hammer, wrenches, handsaw, each in its designated spot. Books stacked on the shelf by subject. History, engineering manuals. 3 novels I'd been meaning to read for a decade. Coffee maker positioned on the counter, where morning light would hit it first. Every item placed with intention, creating order from the chaos of moving boxes. By the time I finished, the sun was lowering. I made coffee too late in the day, but I didn't care and carried it to the porch. The rocking chair I'd bought specifically for this moment creaked under my weight. The elk had moved deeper into the clearing. A hawk circled overhead writing thermals. I called Bula. "Dad." Her voice came through bright and immediate. "Are you there? Did you get it? Signed the papers this morning." I said, "I'm sitting on the porch right now watching elk. I'm so proud of you." The warmth in her tone made my chest tighten. "You earned this." 40 years I sipped coffee. 40 years I dreamed about mornings where I'd drink coffee and watch wildlife instead of highway traffic. "You deserve every moment of peace." She paused. "Cornelius has been so stressed with work lately, sometimes I forget what peaceful even looks like." Something in the way she said it made me pause. "Everything okay?" "Oh, fine. You know how it is. Middle management pressures." She laughed, but it sounded thin. "When can I visit?" "Anytime, honey. You know that." We talked for another 10 minutes. Her students, her garden plans, safe topics. When we hung up, I sat watching the sun paint the mountains orange and purple. The coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. The phone rang an hour later. My parents lost their house. Cornelius didn't bother with hello. His voice had the flat tone he used for conference calls. "They're moving in with you for a couple months until they find a place." My hand tightened on the armrest. "Wait, what?" "Cornelius, I just bought this place. It's barely, for a couple months until they find something. I bought this place to be alone. I spent my entire retirement on." "Then you should have stayed in Denver Friday morning." I'll text you their arrival time." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the clearing where the elk had been. They'd moved on. Smart animals. My knuckles had gone white on the armrest. I forced myself to release it, flex my fingers, breathe. Inside, I poured another coffee I didn't want, and sat at the kitchen table. From my jacket pocket, I pulled a small notepad and a pen, the kind of engineering pad I'd carried for 40 years, grid paper for sketches and calculations. I started writing, not emotional venting, questions, timeline estimates, resource assessments. The cabin keys sat on the table beside my notepad. An hour ago, they'd meant freedom. Now they meant something else entirely. I picked them up, felt their weight, set them down with deliberate care. 40 years I'd been the reasonable one, the peacemaker, the man who swallowed inconvenience to keep family peace. Not anymore. Dawn came through the kitchen windows and found me still at the table. Empty coffee cups formed a semicircle around my notepad, which had grown dense with lists, diagrams, questions written and rewritten. I hadn't slept. Didn't need to. My mind felt sharp in a way it hadn't for years. Focused, crystalline, operating on something cleaner than rest. I made fresh coffee and studied my notes. Then I cleaned up, loaded my truck, and drove back to Cody. The Yellowstone National Park Ranger Station sat 20 minutes west, a modern building designed to blend with the landscape. Inside, educational displays showed wolf packs, bear territories, elk migration patterns. A ranger, maybe 40, with the weathered face of someone who spent more time outdoors than in, looked up from his desk. "Help you? I just moved up from Denver," I said. "Bought a place off County Road 14. Beautiful area." He smiled. "You'll want to be careful with food storage. Lots of bear activity come spring." "What about wolves? I've heard they're back in the region. Reintroduction's been successful." He stood and moved to a wall map, pointing to areas marked with colored pins. "They're usually shy, but they've got incredible sense of smell. Can detect prey or food from miles away." "You hunting?" "No, just curious. I want to be prepared." "Smart." He handed me a pamphlet. "Keep your property clean. Don't leave attractants out unless you want visitors." I took careful notes in my field notebook. Wind direction, pack territories, seasonal behavior patterns. I thanked him warmly, mentioned again that I was from Denver and still learning about mountain life. Every word calibrated to sound naive, concerned, exactly what he'd expect from a nervous newcomer. Back in Cody, I found an outdoor supply store, the kind with taxidermy on the walls and racks of camouflage gear. The camera section sat between hunting equipment and security systems. "Looking for wildlife cameras," I told the clerk. "Want to monitor bear activity near my property." He showed me 2 models with motion activation, night vision, cellular connectivity. "These will do you right. We get lots of folks wanting to keep an eye on their land." $340. I paid cash at the cabin Wednesday afternoon. I installed them methodically, one covering the driveway approach, one angled toward the front porch. I tested the motion sensors, checked signal strength, adjusted positions until the coverage was perfect. The engineering part of my brain, 40 years of solving structural problems, found satisfaction in the precision. Hide the cameras enough to be unobtrusive, position them for optimal capture, test, adjust, verify. Both cameras connected to my phone with 1 bar of cellular service. Weak but functional. Thursday morning, I drove back to Cody. The butcher shop sat on a side street, the kind of place that served ranchers and local restaurants. "Need 20 pounds of beef scraps," I said. "Organ meat, fat trimmings for dogs." The butcher didn't blink. "You got it. $45 for meat, wrapped in white paper loaded into coolers I'd brought." The smell was immediate and powerful. Blood, fat, raw flesh. Thursday afternoon, I stood in the clearing behind my cabin with the coolers open. The wind came from the west. I checked it the old way, wetting my finger and holding it up. I walked 30 yards from the structure upwind. Then I placed the meat in 3 piles, spreading it to maximize scent dispersion. Not random. Calculated. Close enough to draw predators to the area, far enough that they'd focus on the piles, not the building. I wasn't trying to endanger anyone. I was trying to educate them. Back inside the cabin, I moved through each room, locked windows, turned off unnecessary power, set the thermostat to minimal heat, protecting my investment while setting my trap. I paused at the door, took one last look at the space I'd inhabited for less than 3 days, and left without hesitation. The drive to Denver took 5 hours. I arrived at my old house just before midnight, the suburban place I hadn't yet sold, still partially furnished but hollow. I unloaded my truck, set up my laptop in the living room, propped my phone where I could watch the camera feeds. Then I waited. Friday morning, at 10 o'clock, a sedan appeared on my phone screen. Leonard and Grace emerged, looking around with expressions I recognized even on the small display. Displeasure, judgment. The camera microphone picked up their voices. "This is where he's living now." Grace wrinkled her nose. "It smells like pine and dirt. At least it's free." Leonard walked toward the cabin. "Well, stay a few months. Let Cornelius figure out the next step. I don't see why we had to come all the way out." Grace stopped, froze. "Leonard, wolves." 3 shapes emerged from the northwest tree, gray and brown, moving with cautious purpose toward the meat piles. Not aggressive, not interested in humans, just hungry. Leonard saw them, turned white. "Get in the car. Get in the car now." They ran. Grace stumbled, recovered. Car door slammed. The engine started, and gravel sprayed as they reversed wildly, then accelerated down the driveway. The wolves, unbothered, continued toward the meat. I closed the laptop and picked up my coffee, took a slow sip. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "What did you do?" Cornelius's voice had lost its businesslike edge. Now it was just fury. "My parents nearly got attacked." "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "I warned you. This property is in the wilderness. You set this up. You baited those animals." "Cornelius, I live in wolf country. Wolves live here. This is their home. Maybe you should have asked before assuming you could use mine." "You're insane." You're going to what? Sue me because wildlife exists on my property." "Good luck with that. This isn't over." "No," I said, "it's just beginning." I pressed end call, set the phone down deliberately, returned to my laptop, and opened the footage again, watching the wolves finish the meat and disappear back into the forest. Outside my Denver window, the mountains rose in the distance. Somewhere up there, my cabin waited. I'd been planning defense, but sitting there watching the recording one more time, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't about defense anymore. 2 weeks passed before Cornelius made his next move. I spent those days settling into the routine I'd imagined. Coffee on the porch at dawn, watching elk drift through the clearing, reading books I'd postponed for decades. But the peace felt conditional now, like standing on ice that might crack. I checked my phone, more than I wanted to, kept the camera feeds open on my laptop, listened for vehicles on the dirt road. Mid-April brought warmer afternoons, and the first serious wildflowers. I was splitting firewood when my phone rang. "Beulah, Dad, please." Her voice broke on the second word. She was crying. Cornelius showed me the footage of the wolves. That could have been so much worse.